Please be seated. Good afternoon. I am Joshua Wind, Vice President for Health Affairs at the University of North Dakota, and proud to be Dean of your School of Medicine and Health Sciences. On behalf of President Kennedy, the University of North Dakota, and the faculty, staff, and students of the School of Medicine and Health Sciences, it is my privilege to welcome you to these commencement exercises for the graduating class of 2017. I want to thank Kathy Obregon for being our sign interpreter today, and Brent Hermans, the pianist. But first of all, we would like to thank and congratulate all of the mothers in the audience who are sharing their Mother's Day with us. Happy Mother's Day. To all of you, our guests and friends, we are very pleased that you are here. At this time, I would like to introduce the individuals on the platform. I would ask each to stand and remain standing until all are introduced. Please hold your applause until everyone has been introduced. I would like to extend a special note of welcome to the State Board of Higher Education representative, Mr. Greg Steeman. University of North Dakota President, Mark Kennedy. UND Registrar, Scott Carell. Our commencement speaker, Dr. William Mann, Clinical Professor of Family and Community Medicine at the University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences, and Assistant Director of the All True Family Medicine Residency Program. Our Associate Deans, Dr. Joy Dorscher, Associate Dean for Student Affairs and Admissions, and Interim Director of the Indians into Medicine Program. Dr. Gwen W. Hallis, Senior Associate Dean for Education. Dr. Hallis will be retiring in June, and please join me in extending a special thank you and best wishes to her. Dr. Mark Basson, Senior Associate Dean for Medicine and Research. Mr. Randy Aiken, Associate Dean for Administration and Finance. Randy will be retiring in June after nearly 4 decades of service to UND and the School of Medicine and Health Sciences. He helped guide the school through the challenges of the flood of 1997, and his latest feat was overseeing the design, construction, and relocation into our fantastic new home. Please join me in wishing him all the best in the future. Dr. Rick Van Eck, Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning. Dr. Matt Dyke, Associate Dean of the Southeast Fargo campus. And Dr. Michael Booth, Associate Dean of the Southwest Bismarck campus. Our Assistant Deans, Dr. Susan Zaleski, Assistant Dean of the Northeast Grand Forks campus. Dr. Scott Knutson, Assistant Dean of the Northwest Minot campus. Dr. Patrick Carr, Assistant Dean for Faculty Development and Director of Education Resources. Dr. Stephen Tingley, Assistant Dean for Medical Accreditation and Chief Medical Accreditation Officer. And our Flag Marshal, Dr. Roxanne Vaughn, Chester Fritz Distinguished Professor, Department in Biomedical Sciences. Also on stage are the chairs of our biomedical and clinical science departments. The biomedical science chair is Dr. Colin Combs, Biomedical Sciences. The clinical science chairs are Dr. David Schmitz, Family and Community Medicine, Dr. Donald Jurovich, Geriatrics, Dr. William Newman, Internal Medicine, Dr. Dennis Lutz, OBGYN, Dr. Mary Ann Sens, Pathology, Dr. Christopher Tiong-Sun, Pediatrics, Dr. Gary Schwartz, Population Health, Dr. Andrew McLean, Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, Dr. Ted Fogarty, Radiology, Dr. Robert Sticka, Surgery, and Cindy Strom, Administrative Assistant in the Office of Student Affairs and Admissions, who will announce the graduates as they come forward for their degrees and hoods. Please be seated. We are honored to have several other special guests in attendance in the audience at today's commencement ceremony. Please join me in warmly welcoming my wife, Dr. Susan Farkash, First Lady Debbie Kennedy, Ms. Sandra Mitchell, Associate Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, and Mr. Peter Johnson, Interim Vice President for University and Public Affairs. To begin today's festivities, Mr. Greg Steeman will bring us greetings from the State Board of Higher Education. Mr. Steeman.
Thank you, Dean Wynn. On behalf of the North Dakota State Board of Higher Education, I want to extend my sincere congratulations. I want to say thank you for choosing to further your education at an amazing institution within the North Dakota University system. MD sounds pretty good, doesn't it? In the award-winning movie Tommy Boy, Chris Farley says to David Spade in his glorious return home after 7 party-filled years at Marquette with 0 results, "Lots of people go to school for 7 years." To which Spade responds, "Yes, they're called doctors." Be honest, not a single one of you expected to hear a Tommy Boy reference today. And if that movie didn't win any awards, I cannot understand why. In all seriousness, congratulations, and as you move forward, I urge you to approach your next opportunity with a strong sense of humility and a deep respect for those who have already been where you are going. My guess is you have gravitated to someone you respect as a mentor, as the program points out today, and in many cases, you have more than one mentor. There was a reason you respected those individuals, probably more than one reason. With that in mind, please maintain that same respect for those who have gone before you as you do for your mentor. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have so much information readily available about how and why we can do things better than before. I've always thought we can choose to be humble, or the world will be more than happy to do it for us. I want to encourage you to continue to work to be a valuable member of society in all aspects, not just professionally. Be someone who is believed in by those you work for and with. Take it from someone who's made many mistakes in his life, there is no substitute for being trusted. The world needs strong and trustworthy leaders. The more willing you are to serve, and the better prepared you are to lead. What better profession than the medical profession to put true service into actual practice? I realize today's culture promotes a self-first approach. Conversely, I would challenge you to take a servant leadership approach. When you reflect on your life in your more advanced years, it's going to be the times when you gave of yourself that will produce the treasured memories. John Wooden said, "You can't live a perfect day without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you. In the field in which you have immersed yourself, you will have numerous opportunities to give without expecting anything in return." I would like to challenge you to be good stewards of your resources. And right now you're all thinking, dude, we're going to be residents. But later on, you'll have someone. I challenge you to be good stewards of your financial resources, but the resource I'm actually referring to is your knowledge. Be good stewards of your knowledge. Keep in mind that more often than you might realize, how you say something may have much more impact than what you're actually saying. I urge you to keep that in mind when communicating with everyone you come into contact with, whether patients, coworkers, superiors, staff, someone you pass by in the hallway. Winston Churchill said, "You make a living by what you get, you make a life by what you give." Sometimes your words and how you say them may end up being an extremely valuable gift to someone who needs it at just that time. I usually have some redundancy to the talks I give. The reason for that is I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm a recovering jerk, and I do my best to cling to some basic principles. So I'm going to end by asking you to keep a couple things in mind as you move on to your next challenge. First, you are ultimately in charge of your happiness. Don't make it somebody else's job. And secondly, always be willing to grab a broom. If you ever put yourself above basic responsibilities, you're going to lose touch. Congratulations, God bless, and remember, it is always a great day to be a University of North Dakota School of Medicine graduate.
"20 years ago, the class of 1997 graduated while one of the worst natural disasters seen in these parts was wreaking havoc on the community. But the community was resilient, as I hope all of today's graduates will be in the future. Life and medicine brings challenges, but I am confident that all of you graduates to be are well equipped to handle these challenges, just like your colleagues who are practicing across North Dakota. Today, almost half of the physicians practicing in North Dakota and almost 3/4 of the family medicine physicians are graduates of the University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences and our training programs in the state. We have earned a national reputation for our commitment to rural health, and our students are welcomed at some of the most prestigious residency programs in the country. Ultimately, because of your school, North Dakota citizens benefit from accessible, high quality, and affordable health care when compared with most other states. The hope and promise that the people of North Dakota invested in us more than 100 years ago have been realized, and we look forward to achieving even greater levels of excellence in the next 100 years. Before us are 65 young men and women who have reached this point in their lives not only by their own hard work and motivation, but because of the encouragement, support, inspiration, and love from their families and friends. Please join me in acknowledging the sacrifices by their parents, husbands, wives, children, and others that have made this achievement possible. Would all of the family members and friends who have supported these students emotionally and in other ways, please stand for our applause. Thank you. You may be interested to know that the students ranged in age from 22 to 38 upon entering medical school. They came to medical school from throughout North Dakota and the region, from the state's largest cities to its smallest, from places like Forest River, Kindred, Napoleon, and New England. While most of these students hold undergraduate degrees in biology or science disciplines, others have academic backgrounds in areas as diverse as aviation, business, interdisciplinary studies, computer science, agricultural systems management, French, and theater arts. Their varied backgrounds in interests, talents, and hobbies have helped to prepare them to be good physicians and will serve them well as they move into their professional careers. The vast majority of the class received one of their top choices for residency training after medical school. Our students will continue their education for at least 3 additional years of training. They are moving on for training in North Dakota, as well as at the finest institutions throughout the United States. These graduates will be moving east to the esteemed programs at the Mayo School of Graduate Medical Education and southwest to the University of Arizona College of Medicine. They will be found at residencies at the universities of Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and North Dakota. For those who are going out of state, we invite you to come back to North Dakota to practice after your residency training. Members of the graduating class are allowed to have faculty or physician mentors of their choice participate in the hooding process. Several of the graduates have elected to do so, and you will see this happen as the degrees are conferred and the hoods placed. The names of the hooding mentors are listed in your program. At this time, though, I would like to recognize several honored faculty members. In large measure, the quality of our medical education program is dependent on the many physicians throughout the state who serve as voluntary faculty members. They have added and incorporated this activity into their daily medical practice and welcomed our medical students to learn from them and their patients. North Dakota is fortunate that a larger proportion of physicians in the state have voluntary faculty appointments than any other state in the country. As I mentioned at the awards brunch, more than 2 out of 3 of all of the doctors in the state have a clinical faculty appointment at your UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences. The school honors some of these faculty members with the Dean's Special Recognition Award for outstanding voluntary faculty. These physicians have gone above and beyond the call of duty in giving our students the benefits of their time, experience, knowledge, and wisdom gained from years of caring for patients. By example, they have served as superior role models and encouraged our students to define and adopt the highest standards of medical service. It is my pleasure to present the following physicians with the Dean's Recognition Award for Outstanding Volunteer Faculty. When I call the faculty member's name, I would ask you to come forward to receive your award. Dr. Amy Juleson, Clinical Assistant Professor of Pediatrics. Dr. Robert Kempt, Clinical Instructor of Family and Community Medicine. Thank you so much. Dr. Patricia Lindholm, Clinical Assistant Professor of Family and Community Medicine. Dr. William Matt Lowe II, Clinical Assistant Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you. Dr. Timothy Pansegrau, Clinical Associate Professor of Surgery. Dr. Douglas Renton, Clinical Assistant Professor of Internal Medicine. And Dr. Eduardo Yabit, Clinical Assistant Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Several other recipients of this award could not be with us today, but I would like to acknowledge them. Dr. Jacob Fish, Clinical Assistant Professor of Pediatrics, Dr. Alicia Norby, Clinical Assistant Professor of Internal Medicine, Dr. Troy Russin, Clinical Assistant Professor of Surgery, and Dr. Sarah Solberg, Clinical Assistant Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology. The graduating class selected the following outstanding physician leaders who were recognized earlier at the awards luncheon. Would you please stand if you were in attendance? Dr. Kyle Rousseau of the Bismarck campus, Dr. Christopher Tiongson, Fargo campus, Dr. Jonathan Howe, Grand Forks campus, and Dr. David Billings of the Minot campus. Congratulations to each of you for the recognition and honor you received. The Leonard Tao Foundation Humanism in Medicine Awards are given to a graduating medical student and medical school faculty who demonstrate compassion and sensitivity in the delivery of care to patients and their families. These awards were announced at the luncheon earlier, but we would like to again recognize the medical student awardee, Brandon Potter, and Dr. Patrick Carr, faculty member. Please stand to be recognized. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. William Mann, our keynote speaker. The keynote speaker at commencement is selected by the members of the graduating class, and we are delighted that Dr. Mann accepted their invitation. Dr. Mann is a physician in the Department of Family and Medicine for All True Health System. He is a clinical professor of family and community medicine at the School of Medicine and Health Sciences, where he also lectures for the Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training degree program. He served as medical director for the UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences Department of Sports Medicine from 1990 to 1995. He is also an assistant director of the All True Family Medicine Residency Program. He served as chair of the school's Department of Family Medicine from 1996 to 2002, and indeed was the chair at the time of the flood. He returned to the residency program as a faculty member in March of 2002. Dr. Mann has a special interest in sports medicine. He was born and raised in Scotland and received his medical degree from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Bill Mann as the school's commencement keynote speaker. Dr. Mann.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. I thought things were going fairly well. After all, this is one of the few commencement ceremonies that hasn't been picketed or protested about by the students. That was, of course, until people took most of my material. President Kennedy, Vice President Health Affairs, Dean Wynn, State Board of Higher Education Representative Greg Stemmen, faculty, class of 2017, and those that have supported you, parents, grandparents, friends, spouses, and probably the odd counselor, teacher, somebody long ago that gave some advice that changed your direction. We congratulate you in what you've achieved and what you will do. Now, it's pretty fitting that this is taking place in the Chester Fritz. Chester Fritz was born in Buxton, really rough upbringing, impoverished background. But when he became wealthy, he created the Chester Fritz. He put about, by today's dollars, about $18 million into it. It's also supported by the state. And his purpose was to build a distinctive auditorium. A distinctive auditorium. How successful was he? I'm told by musicians, told by friends in the Department of Music, that when you leave the Chester Fritz, Chicago is the next stop for somewhere with comparable acoustics. So the Chester Fritz, big deal, particularly in the days of the big bands. Now, I know most of you don't know anything about the big bands. I'm hoping your parents do. I hope your grandparents do. But the big bands played in the Chester Fritz. The Maynard Ferguson Big Band, the Buddy Rich Big Band. Now that meant, if it was a big band, it meant that economic times were good. Because sometimes these guys were down to a quartet or a trio. But when times were good, they had the big band. And Buddy Rich played here. And to those of us that were interested in jazz and music, that was a huge deal. So the place was packed, and the lights were low, curtain was drawn, and then the curtain slid to the side, and there was the band already in position. And Buddy Rich appears, a pugnacious, angry little guy, with a towel round his neck, because he expected to do quite a bit of sweating. And he had drumsticks in his hand. And he walked right down to the front of the platform. And he looked up slowly. One side, then the other. And then he called out to no one in particular in the darkness, "This new?" And a voice said, "Yes." And he did the slow look once again. And then he nodded, and he said, "Nice, 2, 3, 4." And that's how they started. I've never forgotten it. Now, on Friday, week passed, about 4:45, I was doing some of the inevitable charting, and the program director popped into my office, and he said, "What are you doing this weekend?" I said, "Well, I don't have anything particular planned." And he said, "I think you should go fly fishing at Turtle River. Think about it, you should do that." And he left. I never take anything at face value. What is this about? Now, what I think it was about is I've had a brief, rough time professionally. I've had a couple of patients who've been patients for long enough that I now consider them as friends, with bad illness from which I think there won't be much escape. And I've had 2 friends that I'm now forced to call patients for the same reason. And these stresses will fall upon you in your chosen pathway. They're difficult to handle. And like all difficult things, you can either handle them in a way that will make you stronger, or you can handle them in a way that will make things more difficult. So there's message 1, right there and then. Make you sure, professionally, that you're surrounded by those that care and recognize if you struggle, and do the same for them. I went fly fishing. My casting, though I say it myself, was excellent. My sense of balance was terrible. So was my hip weakness. Time is taking its toll. And I was tying on a fly. I noticed a little bit of tremor in my hand. And I recalled immediately the final scene from A River Runs Through It. And there's Norman MacLean, obvious tremor, age spots on the back of his hand, quite visible. And he says, "Now nearly all those I loved and did not understand in my youth are dead, even Jessie, but I still reach out to them. Of course, now I'm too old to be much of a fisherman. And now I usually fish the big waters alone, although some of my friends think I shouldn't. Eventually, all things merge into one, and a river runs through it." And that's really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the effect of consequential events on how you finally position yourself in your professional life. Now here's the first stream, Lots of little tributaries in this river. I nearly gave this address 27 years ago, 1990. The guest speaker, how they ever got hold of him is beyond me, was Michael DeBakey. Now, Michael DeBakey was either the premier cardiovascular surgeon in the United States or one of two, the other being Denton Cooley. He invented the Dacron graft that saved lives when the aorta ruptured. He pioneered coronary artery bypass surgery. Big, big figure. And the night before the commencement, I got called by the dean, Ed James. Now, Dean James had been a medical corpsman in Vietnam. Imagine what that must have been like, having dropped out of school early. He survived that, and he used his GI Bill to complete his education, go to Oregon, enter surgery, found the surgical residency program here at UND School of Medicine, and then go on to be the dean. So he called me and he said, Bill, Michael DeBakey's having trouble with his connections. I want you to jot down a few things to say in case he doesn't make it. And I said, Ed, this is a commencement address. I don't think it works that way. No, please do this, please do it. Said, I'm really uncomfortable. And then he lowballed me. He said, Bill, do it for me, please. So I jotted down a few things and then paid more attention to the weather and visibility and flight schedules than I ever had before or since. And DeBakey arrived. So I was off the hook. Interestingly, in this small world, I've followed UND sports, covered football since 1985. And as President Kennedy will testify, I don't have much to do. I just stand there, nod occasionally, frown, fold my arms, whatever. And one of the officials came off the field one day, came up to me and said, "You're Dr. Mann, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm Ed James' son." Very interesting, these connections that come back. But interestingly, I had met Michael DeBakey. In 1963, I got selected as part of a two-person English-speaking union debating team to tour the United States, debate against American debaters. So I had to meet with the dean. I needed 3 months off. The dean was not accessible like Dean Wynne. He lived along a cloistered corridor, and you only saw him in interview for medical school and graduation, unless he was telling you that you were no longer welcome. So I went to see him, and he was surprisingly supportive. He said, "Man, this is such an honor to the school. Of course you must do it. I will support this. But I will have to speak to your teachers and make sure they're all in agreement." Yeah, I didn't think that was going to go so well. Dermatology took place on a Saturday morning in a hospital across the river, the far side of the city. So, of course, I'd never been there. Hadn't gone to a single lecture. So I thought, I better get out there really quick. So next Saturday morning, I went out there, and this teacher appeared. He looked really, really old. He was so old looking, I didn't think he should still be teaching. Although in actual fact, he was probably about 5 or 10 years younger than me. But he came in and he lifted his glasses and he said, I have here a letter from the dean. Is man here? And I shouted enthusiastically, here, sir, here. And he said, oh, there you are, man, there you are. That'll be perfectly all right. So clearly you don't want to come and see me with a dermatology problem. But that's all right, as I'll explain later. Now, this debating tour was really very tiring. We traveled every morning, every afternoon, either by bus or plane. We debated in the evening. There was some hospitality following that. And then we went to bed. And it was the earliest days of the drip dry shirt. So you went to bed to the noise of drip, 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 drip. Off again the next morning. Even the English-speaking union realized that this was tiring. So they gave us a long weekend off in which we stayed with an obstetrician in Houston, Texas. And he said to me, have you heard of Michael DeBakey? And of course, in my ignorance, I hadn't. I said, no. All right, come with me. We got into his car and we drove to Methodist. And we went up to the operating room suite. And we gowned and masked. We went into this operating room. There's DeBakey operating with about 5 fellows around him, assisting him. My host said to him, Michael, there's a young Scots medical student here. Thought you might want to talk to him. So DeBakey says to his fellows, close up. Comes out of the operating room, takes his mask off. And he said, where are you from? I said, oh, the River Clyde, Kilcreggan. Yeah? Where's that in relationship to Greenock? I said, it's across the water from Greenock. You look across the water, you're looking at Greenock. I said, huh. My troop ship anchored off Greenock. We went ashore, got on a train, took us to the English Channel, boarded a ship. That was D-Day. I thought, wow. Now, I then spent, when I'd finished 3 years of postgrad, 10 years in the Highlands and Islands. Nice concept by the British government. Areas in which the population was too geographically remote for it to be financially feasible for anyone to look after them. So you went into the Highlands and Islands service and you were salaried. You did more house calls than you saw patients in the office. And you'd be called to things, single-handed. Single-handed is very tough. Test your mettle. Nobody to talk to, nobody to unload to. The things I said in the first opening paragraph, have people around you that care. You're geographically limited. But I'd go to a motor vehicle accident, and the ambulance service would have been alerted by a siren in the biggest village, and the volunteers would turn up. If the fire service was there, volunteers turned up. If it was the Coast Guard, volunteers. But after a while, I noticed these are all the same guys. They just wear different uniforms. And the message came to me very clearly. We're in this together. We better stick up for each other, because that's all there is. Now, you're not free from this, even though you may join groups that are significantly larger. But after 10 years, I thought the National Health Service didn't work. So I went to Canada. Concluded it was just the same, except that the Queen was a bit further away. So I came to the States, and then I realized no health service works. Just doesn't. And this is a problem that will come back to you too. So then when I look back on it, I don't think it was the health service. I think it was me. I think I was distressed and burned out and focused on what I thought might be the cause, but which wasn't. I didn't recognize the stress and the burnout, unlike the dean of the Nevada School of Medicine, the excellent Dean's Hour, who described the same things, but recognized it quicker. And you'll remember how many of your faculty who were present acknowledged feeling the same things. You look at the figures, the burnout rate is about 30% at some stage in your professional career. So what's the second message? Recognize personal stress and do something about it, which in fact is related to message one. Be surrounded by people who understand what you're going through and who are supportive. Well, when I came here, I hung out my shingle. That's what I thought you did. I thought you went to the bank and got an overdraft and then hung your shingle out and everything would be fine. I'm glad I did. I learned a lot. When you're in single-handed practice and you're building a practice, you daren't leave the office because you're terrified that the one new patient of the day might appear while you had ducked out. But I needed some time off. My father was a surgeon in the National Health Service with obligatory retirement at 65. He didn't feel he was done, so what did he do? He started doing locums in general practice in southern Saskatchewan. So I would want to go and visit him. When I did that, I needed to get cover. Now there's a very special group in town called Valley Medical Associates. 12 family physicians and a surgeon. I would ask them for help. They said, sure. But after a while, I began to feel like a chronic debtor. So I would say, can I take some call for you guys? Can I repay it? Can I do a weekend or a long weekend? And they would say, no, it's okay. We've got our own staff. It's not a good feeling to feel that you're taking and you can't put back. And then one day, a physician, family physician called Dr. Dan Goodwin, who in his generation influenced more medical students to go into family medicine than anyone I can think of. And his business manager, Ralph Campbell, came to my office and they said, we had a meeting of our board. We think you should join us. And Ralph Campbell, of course, wasn't a business manager for nothing. He looked at my fancy electric table, which is my pride and joy, and he said, we'll buy that and we'll take your nurse and secretary. Done. So I joined this group. How this group had developed its sense of values, I don't know. But it was very supportive of the medical school. It was supportive of the residency in Grand Forks, which was struggling at that time. It was supportive of students, and they taught. Now, people will tell you, don't teach. It takes too much of your time. And they publish articles saying how much of your time it takes up. 2 patient visits because you've got a student holding you back. Don't pay any attention to that. That's the business model of medicine talking. You will inevitably be in the business model of medicine, but you don't want to espouse and accept its values. The values that you carry with you are the values which were instilled to you in the School of Medicine. The other reason for teaching is absolute selfishness. There's something restorative about interaction with a bright young mind. There's something restorative about interaction with somebody who hasn't been jaded by the bad things that happen in practice and who is still enthusiastic and wow. Teach for self-preservation. The other thing is learn from others. Recognize a mentor. When I became director of the residency program in '83, there was one thing that was obvious to me. Of all the skills that medical students graduated with, one of the areas of deficiency was musculoskeletal examination. What could I do about it? I needed to capture a laboratory. Now, fortunately, one of my residents was a former UND football player. He went and talked to the athletic director. Then he came to me and he said, hey, the athletic director's all fired up. If you supply the medical care for the athletes, you can use that as a laboratory. And it built from there. We got good training for our residents, but also I got to meet some unusual people. I met a guy called Roger Thomas, who became a friend, a patient. I delivered his daughter. But Thomas had inherited a terrible team, dispirited, poor, losing, semi-rebellious, awful. But he brought in some guys. He brought in a guy called Dale Lennon. He brought in a young kid called Bubba Schweigert, Jeff Tesh, Rob Bollinger. The list goes on. And I watched what he did, first of all to the people around him, and then to his players. Coaches have a strong sense of pulling people together, focusing, standing up for each other, and for the same goals. Now, here's your challenges. You're going to be working for a model at the moment which is predominantly business. Now, it doesn't actually know what it's doing. So it has to do things that make it look as if it's on the cutting edge. So it creates targets: blood pressure, blood sugar, whether they're taking aspirin, etc., etc. And you get a report card. Now, the problem with that is that every year our standing in the world standing gets a little worse. So if this really worked, we'd be getting better, but we're getting worse. And it's your generation that has to correct the deficiencies. Now, don't do what I did. There's a t-shirt out there. The t-shirt says, "The problem's not the problem. Your reaction is the problem." Bear that in mind. You can't change health service or health service delivery, but you can make sure that your feelings for your individual patient are kept separate. And you should, because what are you facing? Well, the opioid epidemic, a profession that didn't look at the studies, didn't look at the literature, went along with it, right, left, and center. About 10 weeks ago, I was in the emergency room, early Sunday morning. They're hurrying a gurney in from the ambulance bay. I can tell in one glance, male, 20s, dead. And we have to correct that. We have to take this narrow line between careful prescribing and a humanitarian response to our patients. You can't neglect them. You can't leave them. You can't say, he's a drug addict, whatever that means. I was at an ultrasound meeting in San Diego about 4 weeks ago. I tried to get my 10,000 steps every day. So I'd walk along the harbor walk. On the left-hand side, yachts, boats, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, maybe 50 million. Very interesting. They never ever moved. They just stayed there. with paid crew polishing a bell here, polishing a bell there. I came from the west of Scotland. We sailed every day in life. The locals would laugh themselves silly at a boat that never put to sea. But there it is. But on the opposite side of the road, the homeless, a third of whom are talking to themselves. In other words, they're mentally ill. And in organized health, we don't know who these people are. You have to come up with the model which is going to change that. Now, I'm going to leave you with a couple of thoughts. First of all, this is a school in which a rural state has a lot of dependency. And in the residency program, when we look at our 5-year graduates, we look how many are still doing full scope practice. How many are in populations of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000? It's really important. It's very important. But a lot of the ability to practice in a small area is a personal ability. That's why we ran a little program called Mission Physician. We tried to encourage kids from those areas to come into medicine, hoping that they might be more likely to go back to these areas. But once it's done, and once you graduate, you've only one goal in mind: to be the best you can be. I'll give you an example. One of the people I was talking about, who hasn't got news that we would like to hear, went to Mayo Clinic to meet with a radiation oncologist. She was scared out of her life. So this young fellow walks in and he says, "I see you're from Grand Forks. I went to UND School of Medicine." And he spent the next 3 minutes putting her at her ease until all of her fears disappeared. Remember that. Wherever you go, whatever you do, be the best you can. Now, what are you expected to do? Very briefly. You're a member of a profession. The meaning of profession was defined by Supreme Court Justice Brandeis in the 20s. And it's worth, when you get lost, remembering what he said. First, a profession is an occupation in which the necessary preliminary training is intellectual in character, involving knowledge and to some extent learning, as distinguished from mere skill. Now you know why the medical school entrance, during the entrance, they don't care very much what you've done. They don't care whether you did biology or something else. What they care about is knowledge and intellect. Second, it is an occupation which is pursued largely for others and not merely for oneself. Third, it is an occupation in which the amount of financial return is not the accepted measure of success. I'll leave you with one other thing. The physician's prayer. Sir Robert Hutchison, born in Scotland, practiced in London. From inability to let well alone, from too much zeal for the new and contempt for what is old, from putting knowledge before wisdom, science before art, and cleverness before common sense, from treating patients as cases, and from making the cure of the disease more grievous than the endurance of the same. Good Lord, deliver us all. Class of 2017, I congratulate you. Be your best. Go forth and do good.
Thanks very much, Dr. Mann, for those life lessons. We all can profit from them. Will the graduates please rise for the pledging of the Oath of Hippocrates, which is printed in the program. I would also invite any of the physicians in the audience or on stage who would care to do so to rise as well and join us by re-swearing the pledging of the oath. Colleagues, please take the oath with me at this time. Today, in the presence of family, friends, teachers, and colleagues, I dedicate myself to the profession of medicine. I pledge myself to the service of humanity. I will use my skills to care for all in need without bias and with openness of spirit. The health of my patients will be my first concern. I vow to hold sacred the bond between doctor and patient. I will hold in confidence all that my patients entrust to me. I will strive to alleviate suffering. I will respect the dignity and autonomy of my patients in living and in dying. As a physician, I recognize my duty to society. I will work to promote health and prevent disease. I will advocate for the welfare of my community. Even under duress, I will not use my knowledge or my skills against humanity. I will acknowledge my limitations and my mistakes so that I may learn from them. To uphold these responsibilities, I will maintain my own well-being and the well-being of those close to me. I will promote the integrity of the practice of medicine. In the tradition of my profession, I honor all who teach me this art. Through honest and respectful collaboration with my colleagues, I will uphold the highest standards in the service of patients. I will seek new knowledge, re-examine ideas and practices of the past, and teach what I have learned. Above all, the health of my patients will be my first concern. This oath I take freely and upon my honor. I would ask the graduates to please remain standing.
The candidates for the degree in the School of Medicine and Health Sciences will be presented by Dean Wynn.
President Kennedy, these candidates have completed all of the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Medicine. I, therefore, have the honor of presenting them to you for the conferring of this degree.
Upon the recommendation of the faculty and by the authority of the Board of Higher Education, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Medicine with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities attached thereto.
I would ask the graduates to please be seated at this time, but to follow the direction of the marshals for the hooding and the awarding of degrees.
Colette Louise Chorney. Kelvin P. Dan. Andrew Grayson, Doctor. Jason Allen Duxer. Shelby Nicole Dvorak. Malia Bree Grosskreutz. Eric Charles Heitkamp. Kimberly Lynn Hooshagen. Luke Joseph Hooshagen. Alexander James Johnson. Cole Patrick Labor. Brian Patrick Labor. Lucy Baldwin Ledyard. Amber Rose Dibdal Nielsen. Scott Michael Pazwilko. Kara Prossing. Stephen Elson Rosted. Ryder Scott Beckedal. Siddhant Dash. Marcus John Geffrey. Kelsey Margaret Gladen. Michael Paul Cruchala. Reagan Andrew Helbling. Ashley Maria Horner. Brent John Klinkhammer. Bradley Stephen Kwame. Grant Thomas Larson. Heather Lynn Levy. Megan Marie Meyer. David Lyle Parker. Kyle Eric Runningen. Hasanka Sama Maria. That's too weird. Laurel Ladima Westman. Rebecca Asp. Amy Rachel Boris. Natalie Frances Crawford. Jennifer L. Dobis. Erin Marie Fullman. Brady Lee Junis. Amanda Marie Kleppy. Stephen Michael McKnight. Laura Marie Morgan. Adam Shane Nygaard. Jamie Louise Auden. Sejal J. Parikh. Brandon Lamoureux Potter. Mark William Schlotterback. Jocelyn Ann Seiler. Bryn Elizabeth Stenjum. Christopher John Trainer. Tanner Charles Anderson. David John Thor Collins. Cassandra Payton Cross. Tyler Andrew Downing. Zachary George Fowler. Alec Eugene Gansky. Wesley Joseph Halseth. Christopher Dave Hellickson. Alec Christine Hildenbrand. Ethan Terry Kraft. Matthew Wilson McGee. Emily Jo Schwartz. Anna Catherine Burry Stetcher. Courtney Marie Steichen. Erica Morgan Stein.
It took a lot of work to get to this stage. Let's give our graduates one more round of applause. This is a big day in their lives. It's a big day in the life of University of North Dakota and of North Dakota. I'm reminded of the story of the guy who was driving down the road, saw a car accident, and an injured person there on the ground with a woman beside him, and he quick jumped in and started administering first aid when the woman that he pushed aside said, "When you get to the point where they say, call the medical doctor, I'm right here." When it gets to that point, each and every one of you are going to be the ones that are called. And it is a very noble profession, a very difficult profession, a profession where you are going to be touching lives and shaping their futures each and every day. So I thank you for taking on that responsibility. But also, as Dr. Mann talked about in his remarks, you need to make sure that you remember when you call the doctor to help make sure that you can handle the mental stress and the other stress that are going to be involved in your profession. Because you can only be as good for your patients as you are prepared to be. And so I encourage you to take his remarks to heed. But also, when North Dakota calls for doctors, they call to the University of North Dakota. We are very proud to be taking on this role and take it very seriously, and you are the fruits of that labor. And when we call for doctors, we're very appreciative that, as Josh said, 2 out of 3 doctors in the state of North Dakota steps forward to help our very able faculty to deliver the quality of education that is honored and revered around the country. So this is a wonderful day for University of North Dakota, for the graduates, for everybody that helped bring them to this stage. We wish you the very best. We know you'll be leaders in your profession and your communities, and we'll be proud every day to be calling you graduates of the University of North Dakota. Thank you.
The final comment that I have is to take you back, take the students, now the doctors, back 4 years to the white coat ceremony. And I quoted a Boston physician, Dr. Francis Peabody, who said words something like, "The key in caring for the patient is to care about the patient." He said that, I think, a century ago. I can think of no words that still apply to what you're going to be doing starting right now. So congratulations to all of you, and will the audience join me in welcoming these new physicians into the class of the health professions, and please congratulate the medical school class of 2017. So thank you all for coming and joining us today on this wonderful occasion. Happy Mother's Day. Following the recessional, we would ask you to join us for refreshments in the lobby. Thank you for all attending, and congratulations.